Good evening, Danvers. Welcome to the Topics of the Town News, September 10th, 2020. Today, I have a special co-host with me tonight, Keith Lucy. Keith Lucy, and I have also, just to remember John Toomey has always been with us, but currently he is unavailable due to being very cautious. And I agree with that. And we want to make sure that John watches the show. Keith has, as an introduction, I don't think he needs much of an introduction, but I asked him to give us a autobiography. And Keith has experience with town government for at least 20 years. The depth of his involvement includes many, many issues. But Keith, can you just give us a little background of who you are, what you are, and where do you operate from?
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for having us on. Thank you for David Rodriguez for helping us out so much. David makes this look easy, but it's not, especially with all this remote connection stuff. But he's doing great work. And Mark, you make it look easy as well. It's not. People need to know that this takes a lot of work and last-minute preparation and everything else. So thanks to the both of you. But my name, is Keith Lucy. Been in town for 27 years. Been paying property taxes for 27 years. You'll have selectmen that'll tell you they have long family histories. They haven't been paying property taxes for 27 years like I have. But I got involved. We just spoke, Mark, pre-show, and I said there's some things that get people off their couch, right? So back in, I moved in 93. Everything was, I had little kids. I was involved in youth sports. My kids went to the same area school. We were involved down there. But what gets you off your couch and makes you come down to town hall is when they start raising taxes, right? That's one of the two things. The other one is this one, patriotism. This wakes people up, right? So I got involved in 99, 2000 with the first override attempt. Only listening, wasn't involved. 2 years later, I'm back with a second attempt. And I said, but didn't they hear us? So that's when the ball started to move. And in 2004, I was elected to the Board of Selectmen, served 9 years. I would honestly say maybe 4 of them were fun, and the last 5 were not so fun. I was joined by a couple of people that just couldn't see eye to eye, no matter what the case. And we'll get into that later. But no, it was great. It was a great time, and I've been involved ever since. We were involved with defeating the CPA. We were involved with setting up a plan to build high schools without overrides. We did a lot of great work, Mark, and it's you were there as well, the Board of Selectmen the whole time, and but there's certain things that make you go out and get involved, and I think hopefully this show acts as a call to action for some others to get off their couch and come on down and get more involved if they're involved, and get involved if they're not.
There you go, Keith. Thank you very much. You have been around, and we've had issues between ourselves just on the commitments. We couldn't agree on certain things, but we work together all the time, and that's where the current board right now doesn't seem to want to comply with the wishes of the town, and this is all about the town. So now, David, if you can just throw up the King Unwilling Danvers Town Seal. That is a true representation of what the heck is going on in this town. Our residents should really study this town seal, because the town seal says very, very much about what we are, who we are, and how we handle our town government. As you see in the center of the seal, you see the town meeting, the purest of all democracies, the strongest of all citadels of civil liberty. So what we're going to be talking about during the show is really, what are we really up to? We have elected officials that are not truly representing us. So now what we need to do is we need to move on to the next item on the show. And what we have is we have about 5 or 6 topics that we want to complete. However, I always add an extra topic in there just in case we don't have much time to fill, but we always fill the time, so we always go over. So our first news story I have identified as Danvers school system is in disarray. School issues regarding discrimination. But I think, Keith, you have more of a in-depth interview or knowledge about what is going on with that particular issue. That popped up 3 weeks ago, I think. And now they're talking about school committee intends to have an outside investigator examine social media posts.
Right.
Social media, that's exactly what I try to stay away from because that is so convoluted. So
Yeah.
Keith, take it away.
It's a situation that really, if you know anything about what's going on, has its roots back in the Danvers High School parade. I mean, there's been underlying issues at that school for the past 20 years, right? Bullying issues and the tragedies that have occurred there. Parents constantly fighting with administration over special needs programs and tuition out programs, and it's an ongoing battle, right, with the school committee versus the parents, right? Parents are down there trying to get the best for their kids, and the school committee is just really, trying to push them back into the system as much as possible. But if you know anything about what happened down at the school, it really did start with the Danvers High School parade, nice event, try to get the seniors something to recognize themselves as they leave the high schools. They put together a car parade. Well, one vehicle showed up with some political signs on it, and it wasn't greeted so well. Parents got upset, approached the school committee, wanted something to be done. School committee wisely said, look, that's free speech. The graduated seniors. Well, that's now unraveled into a lot of activity in town. I'm not going to go into specific names and dates, but I myself have been affected in my own home with vandalism and beyond that, right? Damage done, police involved, kids caught. It's terrible. It's terrible. But the bottom line is that it's really started to peel the onion of what's going on at Danvers High School. And I wish the kids well that are uncovering, pulling back the curtain and saying, it's time to look at what's really going on at this school. And not just our school, but the schools probably across the region, a lot of the stuff's going on. Some of it's, you can call it gray. Some of it's not. Some of it's black and white. Inappropriate behavior by teachers, inappropriate behavior by administrators. And it's so unfortunate that a public school that's so well funded and they like to think that they're so well thought about that this behavior can go on. But it's terrible.
Well, that's been an issue, Keith, for a long time. There have been attempts, and even at town meeting, to cut back the funding for the schools because people do not see that the education system is challenging our students. Our students are there to roll through and get out. That's all they want. And what it's become, the school, at least from what I've seen, is that they are making the kids feel good because that's what the administration and the school committee wants. The thing is that they have forgotten that education is the basis of everybody's, future development in college and in further work life. But they don't believe, at least I don't believe, that they're teaching our students enough of the basics. And there is no discipline in the schools. So I think this is a result of that because I thought when I started reading this, the superintendent, earlier this month, the superintendent, Lisa Dana, sent a note to parents and students to say administrators were looking into posts by students that were contrary to our mission to provide the inclusive school environment free from discrimination. Yeah, if there was discrimination in there, they should have taken care of it during the school year when they were in business. Now, as an example, I've noticed that some residents have sent in letters with their tax payments, and the tax payments are divided into 50% for the town government and 50% for the school administration or school development. And those funds are basically asked to be held in escrow. And I think that's the right thing to do. They need to start to feel that the townspeople do not appreciate what's going on there. So I don't know where this thing is totally going, but right now, will they become productive members of our society? Some of the students that have raised these issues definitely will become, good members of society. Will they all receive diplomas as reward for attending? Probably, because that's what the school system does, pushes them along. I have experience in the past, and you probably have too. When students graduate from Danvers High School, they go into college, and the first year is really a repeat of the basics that they should have learned during their 4 years at the high school. And we pay $70,000-$80,000 a year for the 1 year that they spend in there. So it happens, but this is serious. So I'm going to continue covering the story, and I think, with your help, we may be able to get to the bottom of it. But right now, it's being swept under the rug.
Well, Mark, three quick points, so we can move on to our next topic. One was, you mentioned that the superintendent's office sent that email out to all parents. Why not all townspeople? Right.
That's right.
We pay the bill over there, like you just said. We pay the bill. Right, not just the parents, right? We all pay the bill. But second, I encourage people to go watch a movie called Waiting for Superman. It's been around for 15 years, and it talks about what happens in public schools. You get special needs kids that get treatment the way they expect and deserve. You get high performing kids who will actually get challenging classes, and so the top 10% or so will get challenged. But there's this middle crew,
right?
And they, in the movie, they discuss it, and it's just the regular ed treadmill, and those are the kids you say go off to. Some of them will go off to great colleges and do great things, right? But they're being let down in their education, and they should be challenged more, right? And the third point I wanted to make was that I learned early on that to take control of your children's education, and so when you talked about my kids going off and just to higher education and not being prepared, that didn't happen to me. My kids didn't go to the Amazon. It's no secret.
The point I was trying to make on that issue is that from the parents that I have spoken to and at the universities, Syracuse, University of Maine, UMass.
Yeah.
Basically, what they tell me is that the first year, the courses are geared to repeat everything that they were supposed to learn in the 3 or 4 years at the high school.
That's right.
So, and we're paying to the nose for that. We're paying for that twice because we're paying our taxes, and then we're paying tuition and the board. So.
Well, there's also, Mark, you've seen letters that I've written about grade inflation at the high school, right? And when you see a middle school or a high school honor roll, and 60% of the kids are on the honor roll, right? That tells you something.
They want to be cuddled,
right? It's a continuation of the participation trophy, all the stuff that's going to lead us into our next discussion.
That's right. So. The next topic I have, and this is story number 2, and this is really a repeat from my previous shows. And Keith, you had very little to do with that, but I just want to repeat this thing because I am very concerned. And I go back to the old country and behind the Iron Curtain, socialism, and everything else that's going on. All house arrests and quarantines are imposed by our governor and town manager are voluntary. And we are voluntarily obedient to our elected dictators who are asking us that we abandon our liberties and religious commitment. We are held hostage in our own homes with no end in sight. So I hope I have written a letter to the letter to the editor to the Salem News. And this is basically entitled, State Governments Attack Our Freedoms, Town Governments Comply. By being complicit to the request and the dictates from the governor, we basically put our population in lockdown, a medical lockdown, basically. That's what happened. And we don't seem to be able to get out of it. So this has been an ongoing issue. I will continue preaching my part of it. But one of the most important things that I identified in this letter is legal actions are being filed against the governor and our dictatorial town managers and mayors. All of their guidance actions are illegal and unconstitutional. There's one thing that we all forget. Oh, I forgot. The governor closed the courts, sent them home with pay, and we have to wait until dictatorships expire. So we're stuck in a catch-22, and we can't seem to get out of it because we are so obedient. Pretty soon, we're going to have to go out to the streets and demonstrate our displeasure with what the heck is going on. So that's my say on that subject. And story number 3. This is a continuation of what I've just been saying and from the previous one. Resident reaction to town manager directing the fire department chief personally remove the thin blue line flag off of our fire trucks. David, if we can show the flag, please. I think that's a demonstration of this is not a political flag. This is not a political issue. This is a remembrance of a fallen policeman that was shot in Weymouth. And the fire department and the police departments in the surrounding communities have taken it upon themselves to raise this flag and demonstrate their support for their fallen this is a fallen officer. And that's what this flag represents. And as we have heard, it's been co-opted by other organizations. But I think, Keith, if you can go into this, because the one thing I want to talk about is on Monday, August 31st, we had a demonstration at the square. And if you want to get into this a little bit?
Well, certainly. I mean, that's the one of the main reasons why I was glad that you had me on, Mark. So, I mean, I tried to make the point at the community conversation on Wednesday that the town manager can do this, right? But it doesn't mean the answer is final, right? The point I made that night was that the town manager, through the Town Manager Act, has control of all building and equipment in the town. And for those who don't know, you can go online and you can get a copy of the Town Manager Act. In it, you'll find that there's a chapter 13 that really spells out the duties and responsibilities and authority of the town manager, which is what I'm sure he's going to stand behind. Paragraph 13H, which says, I can actually read it for you verbatim, but it talks about the town manager has the ability to appoint this board and that board and on and on and on, and pay the bills and do all these things. And it says the town manager shall have jurisdiction over all the rental and use of all town property except schools. Yeah, he's right. So he can sit there and go ahead and say, take that flag down. And he did nothing wrong. So when people think that he's being a dictator and everything else, no, it's within his authority in the town manager to do this. The problem that he forgets about, or maybe he doesn't know about, because Mr. Bartha is fairly new to town and fairly new to the state of Massachusetts, right? What you put up there was the king unwilling. And people that don't know the history of Danvers have to understand that the town of Danvers was founded when the king was unwilling to grant it as a separate town away from Salem. The townspeople took it upon themselves to create the town of Danvers when the king was unwilling. And that's where that phrase comes from. It also mentions in your open, you talked about the town meeting body, right? The town meeting body ultimately has final authority in this town. And if the town meeting body doesn't like it, actually the voters, even though we have representative town meeting, the voters still retain all the rights of final say, right? So where is that mentioned in the Town Manager Act, right? The town manager needs to scroll down to paragraph 13L, one of my favorite paragraphs in the Town Manager Act itself. So the Town Manager Act says the town manager can do all these things. Out of efficiency, great idea. Without waiting for a vote, he can do this, he can do that, he can do the other thing. And that's what this is all about, efficiency, right? But 13L says, word for word, said town manager shall perform such other duties consistent with the office as may be required by the bylaws or by vote of the town or by vote of said board of selectmen. Now, we've been down this road before. And in 2005, when I first joined the board, one of the very first things that happened in town was the town manager, Wayne Marquis at the time, decided to trade in a fire truck. After the town meeting had said, no, keep the fire truck as a reserve piece. There was a debate and a vote that said we want to keep this fire truck as a reserve piece. Mr. Marquis went ahead and traded it in. It caused a stir, not unlike what we're seeing right now, right? We didn't have to have a special town meeting. We already had a vote that said you don't have the authority to trade in that truck. Town meeting has said keep that truck, right, and buy the new truck. And guess what had to happen, Mark? The phone call we made to say send the trade-in truck back. It parked out behind engine 2. It was used as a reserve piece several times. And the funniest part was, within a month, the new truck was out for repair. There was some sort of a defect in the brand new fire truck. And guess what could put back into service? The reserve piece that was behind engine 2. So my point is that the Town Manager Act is not an abdication of authority. The Town Manager Act is an assignment of authority. And that authority can come back to the Board of Selectmen first, and the town meeting second, and the townspeople third. And I thought Mr. Clark did a good job explaining that the other night, that ultimately a town-wide referendum could be held on this issue if the town meeting does not decide the matter appropriately for the townspeople. Anyone, no matter what the town meeting says, if the town meeting says authorize the use of the flag, or don't authorize the use of the flag, right? A referendum vote can be held to say, do the townspeople think that the flag should be authorized, not authorized? So, well, Mark, we started last Tuesday, and we worked through the week last week, and so it's the worst kept secret in town. Show you, how many are here, right? I'll tell you, there's much more than 200. Signatures on a petition that simply states to see if the town will vote to authorize the use and display of the thin blue line flag on fire and other public safety apparatus or take any other action thereon. Now, this is signed by folks, of course, that want to see the blue line flag restored, right? But when I explained it to them, and Mr. Bates, I thought, did a good job explaining the process that was used here is flawed, right? When I explained to some folks that want to see the blue line down, they said, you're right, we should debate this at a town meeting, and they signed the petition, right?
You have the majority then. Right.
Because they understood this is not a one-man action. And the Board of Selectmen, love them or hate them, are unwilling to step out of the box that's called the go along to get along box. Now, Mark, you were a selectman for 3 years, right? I was a selectman for 9 years. With me, the temptation was never there to go along to get along, right? Did you ever feel a temptation that it's time to just be a good old boy and let's just back the town manager no matter what he says?
That's not the reason why I ran for the office, and I executed my responsibilities to the residents, not to the Board of Selectmen. And that's where the problem is. Now, on this particular issue, my assumptions and my conclusions are that the Board of Selectmen, basically, this is not the first time they threw the town manager under the bus.
Well,
This has happened in the past, like you explained. It's happened in other occasions. But the town manager doesn't seem to understand that he is a hired employee of this town by the Board of Selectmen. He is not the political active member of that board.
Right.
What I see right now is that the function of the town manager has been sort of assumed to be part of the Board of Selectmen. That's not what it is. He is an employee, and he should respond to administrative and financial issues that he is assigned. Now, he got into this mess by assuming that politics are in his venue, and that's not true.
That's what I wanted to ask him is, do you want to be a town manager or do you want to be a politician?
Well, he wants to be a mayor.
Right. Well, but I don't put the blame here on the town manager. I really don't, right? Because nature abhors a vacuum, right? And in the vacuum of leadership that is the current Board of Selectmen, the town manager felt as though he could act independently. Now, he's done this several times in the past. He proposed removing the police chief from civil service, failed miserably at town meeting, which means the town manager is not in alignment with the town meeting body. Right now, who's the buffer in between those two things, Mark, that failed the town manager? Right,
Board of Selectmen.
Right. He then goes on to propose a CPA, a Preservation Act tax. Right, Prop 2.5 override law is. You and I were involved. Right, defeating it. He went ahead and proposed that. Now, it passed town meeting. Right, but he was out of step with the town's people. Right, the town itself voted to reject it. 60%, 40%, overwhelming, right? He was once again out of touch with the town's people, the town voters themselves. Who's his buffer? There, in that case, the buffer was once again, the Board of Selectmen should have said, no, don't go near that. That's not a good idea. Now, I thought he was finally getting it. When, remember the Smith School construction, there was debate offline about whether or not to propose a Prop 2.5 override to build the Smith School. I met with the town manager. He invited me in, and I said, look, that will never pass in this town. A Proposition 2.5 override will never pass in this town. Get used to that, right? That is one of the parameters you are operating under, right? And he wisely took that advice from me and from others, right? But I didn't hear once the Board of Selectmen trying to stop him from proposing it. So
they were encouraging him.
So again, they were saying it's the only option. We're constantly, Mark, given these false choices, right? We have to have an override to build the schools. If we don't have an override, we can't build the school. If we don't have an override and we build the school, well, we can't have a police and fire department, right? There'll be no money left for parks and recreation, right? It's all false, and I made a list of all these false exchanges. When they went to put up the gay pride flag the first time a few years ago, right? What had to happen? The POW MIA flag had to come down. What? But a little bit of one night of discussion realized that it was a better solution to fly both, right? And we need the CPA tax, or else there'll be no money for any infrastructure improvements, right? It's insane.
Well, that whole tax has dwindled to a level where it's not even worth applying.
That was right. We're not even right. That wasn't even.
But
the way it was presented, Mark, was if we don't have this, then we'll have no money to take care of our parks and recreation and elderly housing and the other things that those funds can be used for. Complete hogwash.
Yep. All right, let's move on, because I think we got too much material and we're not going to be able to get through it. But what I wanted to do is get a clip from the conversation meeting with the town, between the town and the Board of Selectmen. And at that meeting, basically, this was on Wednesday, last Wednesday, at the field house. And it was well attended, well communicated, but the two people that were involved in making this decision sat there like logs on a pile of wood, because they were afraid to say anything. Some of the other ones were sort of ridiculous, but that's okay. So, David, if we can run the Bill Clark clip, please. And this may not be great viewing, but let's see what comes out. This is the field house.
Just in case you don't know,
And
I've been a
everybody
town meeting member.
attended with distances and masks and everything else, and it's it's out of control. But Bill made a statement, and I
Topic.
just, go ahead.
For 39 years and now a selectman for 15. I have never been involved with anything like this before in the 54 years that I've served this town. I also have never received as many emails as I've received in the last week. I am appalled, absolutely appalled, by the vulgar language, the threats and intimidation that's made by a minority of people who are sending us some of these emails. I also express and thank all of you coming here tonight to try to solve this problem or try to unite ourselves in our community that we all love. I resent the fact that I have personally been attacked by people stating that I have not had a support for the police or fire departments in this town. And I just want to spend a minute to defend myself, because there has been no one that I know of over the last 50 years who has been as supportive of the fire and police departments as I have, going back to 1967 when I voted for A. There's been no one.
It's very clear of what Mr. Clark is all uptight about. Is what he's really saying is that I've never heard as much of a response from the general public about an issue that I neglected, basically. That's the problem. And the question you have to ask yourself when these kinds of comments are being presented to a audience of about 100 to 150, you got pizza? No, that's not good. But Mr. Clark has to ask himself the question of why have people sent so many emails to him, sent so many complaints to him? Because the Board of Selectmen at their meetings does not give the opportunity for residents to express their views, and they don't want to hear it at their meetings. They don't want to extend the meeting because they're so busy they have to go home. And most of the meetings that have been held recently are through their living room. So Mr. Clark needs to really ask himself the question of why are these people doing this? So, Keith?
Well, you're right. That meeting was an embarrassment. The decision was made. I mean, there was no new information given. The four members just sheepishly backed the town manager. Well, one of them. Let me go through them one by one, I guess.
Right.
They're public officials, so they need to pony up to their actions. I'll say right now, the most embarrassing one of the bunch was Mr. Bennett. He said nothing. I know he sits behind that chairman's microphone and he thinks that he doesn't need to speak, right? That he facilitates. Well, no, that's actually a position of extreme leadership. I served as a chairman for 1 year, and I understand you can really serve to lead the other members, and he failed miserably at that. The second member that spoke, and okay, Mark, I hope you're sitting down here. I hope everyone in town is sitting down. But there was one selectman that spoke that said something that, in the first time in 20 years, that I 100% agree with. Mr. Trask and I agree on something, right? Mr. Trask, he quoted Minister Warren, right? Rick Warren. And I looked it up to make sure I have it correctly. And what Mr. Trask said was, and he's exactly right. We agree, so now he has to be right. Our culture has accepted two huge lies. The first is that if you disagree with someone's lifestyle, you must fear or hate them, right? The second is that to love someone means you agree with everything that they believe or do. Everything that they believe or do.
Right.
Both are nonsense. You don't have to compromise convictions to be compassionate, right? Meaning we're constantly sold these, well, if you're a conservative, then you must hate this. Well, if you're a liberal, you must love this. And if you don't, then something's wrong with you, right? So after he said that, I said, wow, maybe he's finally getting it, right? That there is some gray area, that I can be what they call a compassionate conservative. I can care about people, but still be Republican, right?
Well, see, Keith, the one thing that I noticed.
He then went on to preach the exact thing he showed was a farce. He started counting heads to say that there's X number in favor and X number opposed. And he started that division right down the middle. And he tried to say, the BLM people are on this side and the blue line people are on that side, right? And I thought he had a clue for a second, but I was wrong. So the point I'm trying to make is that he's right in that you can believe in both, that Black Lives Matter, which I believe is like the lowest standard you could ever apply to a life, that it matters. I mean, come on, seriously, it's ridiculous, the term itself. But then you can also believe in strong, first responders and police and fire and what this provides is a free, remember it's free, right? A free morale boost to our first responders, right? Now, when a first responder has to come to your house, hopefully no one here ever needs that, right? But do you want them to have high morale or low morale, right? The day they show up at your house.
Well, that's Keith, that's not even the issue that's on the table right now. The issue on the table is that we are being dictated by a hired employee of the town.
Yeah. Well, not anymore. It's beyond him.
To do with a political symbol that he
Right.
even defined it as a political symbol.
Right.
It is
But
not a
it's not him.
political symbol.
But Mark,
So, the thing
that conversation meeting, Mr. Bartha is out of the conversation now.
right.
And he's not even part of the conversation. And the process going forward doesn't even involve him.
Nope.
Right?
He's out of the picture.
Right. The filing of a petition goes to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen call a town meeting. And the town manager really, I know he's from Connecticut, but he has to learn Mass General Law. I don't have the chapter and verse in front of me, but I'll tell you right now, it involves none of the town managers, right? It's the same law that applies to open town meetings, representative town meetings, town administrator towns, town manager towns. It's the town manager is now out of this conversation. And so I was impressed again. So Mark, hope you're sitting down again. I was impressed the other night when I challenged the Board of Selectmen to actually have a vote that night, and they did, right? So they've weighed in, and now we no surprise. But the third member I want to discuss, by the way, is Mr. Clark. After Mr. Trask had his emotional speech about everyone getting along and false choices, Mr. Clark goes on, and I can only imagine he was referring to me. At first, he said I was right, and he understands the referendum process, by the way. He spelled it out. He knows what's coming, right? He then refers to me as his enemy. His enemy. Because I'm using the powers granted to the citizen, the voter, by the state of Massachusetts and the Town Manager Act itself. I'm his enemy. Enemy. So again, Mr. Trask sits there talking about false choices. People can agree and disagree. But remember what Ronald Reagan said. A person that agrees with you 80% of your time is an ally, not a traitor, right? We probably agree, me and you don't even agree 100% of the time. I always like to add, if someone agrees with you 100% of the time, one of the two of you needs to get your head checked, right? Right?
That's right.
And so we can disagree, right? And that's why, I mean, to me, it's just we're gonna now we have the opportunity to move past the Board of Selectmen get it to the town meeting body, and let them weigh in. A more open-minded, larger group of individuals that can speak for themselves and not worry about political consequences as much as the Board of Selectmen does. And you know,
let's hear from the clip that I have in there for, I think, Mr. Trask. David, could you run that, please?
As I watch this issue,
And then we have another one from Maureen Bernard. That's the one I was so impressed to hear.
I do have 2 more selectmen to get to, so save.
Yep. Here's Mr. Trask, and this is a short one. I'm not going to go long. Go, David.
as I watch this issue unfold on social media, the press and emails, as well as in dialogue tonight, I listen for reoccurring themes about the issues people raised in opposition or support of the removal of the flag. And I'd like to address those themes individually. Number one is taking down the flag means you hate the police or you're disrespecting the police. And first and foremost, I should not have to say it, but for clarity I will. I'll state the obvious. I fully support the Danvers Police Department, Fire Department, dispatchers, and first responders. I respect and thank members of these professions for keeping my family and my community safe. I take pride when I say I come from Danvers, and it's in reflection to the police department or fire department or dispatchers or first responders. That said, my respect and support is not embodied or demonstrated or wrapped in a piece of fabric. My respect comes from my heart and is demonstrated by my direct actions and interactions with these professionals. Over 20 years as an elected official, I have consistently voted in favor of their budget, and when we do have disagreements, which we have had in the past, we always do so with respect. I've never publicly criticized any responders' actions or those of their departments, so I take offense at some of the postings and emails
I think
that
I think this reinforces Keith's position and his role in regards to Mr. Trask. Finally, we agree on something, but I don't know who wrote in that speech. But
Well,
he was absolutely right.
He equates support with voting for their budget.
Right.
Right. And like I said earlier, you know, allowing the firefighters to show support of the police by flying a flag is not a budget issue, right? It's a morale issue, right? I know a lot of firefighters. I know a lot of police officers, right? Davis one's all for good reasons, but no.
That's right.
You talk to a police officer, and I did today. I spoke to a police officer, not a former police officer, a current police officer, and he said it is amazing around town when they're at a detail or they'll stop in to do some public outreach. The amount of support that they're seeing that this has caused, right? A former police officer, that's no big secret who it is, said in 42 years on the force, he has never seen what he saw last Thursday. The support for police officers in this town. So Mr. Track loves to mince words and think he can, what he did too, by the way, which was disingenuous, was he said they were common themes, right? Okay? Which means that he's going to assume what someone else was thinking and lump them into a big pot. So when he said, you hate the police, no one, I read all the emails, no one said you hate the police. Right?
See, one of the...
He creates this false narrative, and then he believes he can rise above it and take the higher ground. He's disingenuous. He's a stop me before I say something bad.
That's okay. Let's move on a little bit further, because what I wanted to interject with is when we get to the speech that Scott Frost made at the Thursday night demonstration or rally at the town hall was empty. Nobody was there. They even locked the door, and we used the door at the end of the show that, hey, it's empty again. Now, one of the things that I noticed, and I don't think we're going to go into David Mills, or maybe we'll get into Maureen Bernard statement. Why don't we do that first? David, could you run the next clip, which includes Maureen Bernard? Because I think David we know what his statement was. Okay, in the meantime,
There it is.
oh, here we go.
I wish that we've had a meeting prior to this to voice our concerns. The blue line, the thin blue line here, have different interpretations of the blue line flag. I'm sure there are many more, depends on what a person sees and believes. A lot of people have come up here to speak, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I think the biggest thing is the communication. I think us as board members with the town manager need to have more communication. I understand that we're a country in which democracy is based on voting, and our people see is the majority rules. Taking this away from our citizens, having one person make a controversial decision, is why this more protesting in our quiet town. It's on our doorsteps. We didn't ask for this. What I want to say is what sets Danvers apart from other communities is how the people that live in our town stick together and we support our police, our fire, our town workers, our select boards, our town manager, okay? Our community supports all this local business, okay? Our quiet town now has controversy and protesting in its streets. I feel, I'm sorry, Steve, no disrespect, but I feel a topic with such controversial issue of this, we should have been notified as a board, okay? We could have had a special meeting, we could have posted it, or even a phone call before a decision was made to take the flag down. We don't have to micromanage Steve, he does a good job. However, I feel I would have appreciated a phone call, okay? A lot of this is saying that the chairman of the board and the town manager ordered the chief to pull down the flag. I don't know if that's true. I do know that I would not support the town manager's decision and remove the flag. I just hope that we can all be one, okay, be united. I come from a lot of diversity within my own family, police, fire, color, gay, lesbians, everything, okay? We're Danvers. We all need to stick together. All lives matter. These officers, these people risk their lives every day, okay? They put their uniform on. A lot of people spoke about that. I valued everybody's opinion. I took down some notes. I am always open to talk to you. And I just wish that we could have some better communication here amongst the board, maybe because I'm a junior selectman and I don't know all the rules yet, or maybe something of this urgency, we could talk with legal counsel, put it in the bylaws that something of this magnitude, could we all just meet and talk? Let's have a meeting like this before it comes to this. Thank you very much.
All right, David, thank you. Now, there's well, she called herself junior selectman. I think she grew up a lot in the last couple of days because she stood up to the establishment that has been in force for 12 to 15 years. Their term limit should have expired years ago.
Well, Mark, so just so people know, there's no such thing as a junior selectman.
I know that.
You can be the newest selectman on board, and that's what we talked about before. She hasn't given in to that temptation, right, that I see others give into. You didn't give into it. I didn't give into it. Stan Svensson, God rest his soul, never gave into it.
Right.
The temptation to go along to get along, right?
It's the pressure. It's the pressure, not just
Yeah.
the temptation.
It's certainly easier, right? And I'll call him up by name. Mr. Trask came in with that assumption already under his wing that he's just going to go along with the town hall, whatever they say, right? Mr. Clark, same way. He knows once he got paid in the late '90s that he better go along with whatever town hall says, right? Go along, get along. Mr. Bennett was the lone voice for a while. Nope, he's lost his way, right? The previous selectman, Mrs. Langlace, right? She was the one, right, for a while. Then she lost her way as well, right?
Oh, no, she got pressured into something.
Well, call it what you want to call it. Call it peer
Well,
pressure, right? Call it just a
Pete, the
temptation.
one thing
I want to go to the meetings, and I don't want to be the only outcast, right?
Oh, no, I know how that feels.
Oh, me too. Right, me too. I had friends along the way. I watched other selectmen that I served with, cave because they just wanted to get along, right? So, and then we have Mr. Mills, right? Now, Mr. Mills, if I can mention his discussion the other night, it was unfortunate that he let emotion get the best of him, right? I can understand his 70+ year struggle, right? But we're not in the 1960s anymore. We're not in the 1970s anymore, David. We're not in the 80s or the 90s anymore. David, we're beyond that, right? And we're well beyond that. And in fact, we're going the other way now, where homes like yours are not attacked and vandalized for your lifestyle, right? Homes like mine are, right? My home was vandalized. My home was damaged, right? For what I believe, right? And so it's just so unfortunate that David let it get the best of him. And I mean, I consider him a friend. And so when he painted me as equivalent, and I wrote down his notes as well, as someone that wanted to kill him, right? He said, there are people that fly that flag that want me dead. I flew that flag. Do I want you dead? No. It's again a false choice that Mr. Mills perpetrated, Mr. Trask perpetrated, Mr. Clark perpetrated, right? Bennett stayed silent like the coward that he is. And Miss Bernard was the only one that showed a spine that night to think on her own, speak on her own, act on her own, right? And so she's really the only selectman we have in this town that's willing to openly discuss what she feels. So I wish her support, and I hope others come out to support her next year.
Keith, we're going to have to move on because we're running out of time again.
We always do. I thought we tried to do a good job scheduling this, and we always go over. I
know, that's all right. But
it's my fault.
what I wanted to do is just to address the wrap up of what happened on Thursday. Basically, I went out there to report on what the rally was all about. I went with my camera and a tripod, and I had my camera was moving all over the place. I interviewed several people. That particular rally was programmed into the cable programming last Friday and last Sunday. What we're going to do is we're going to edit that film that I took, and I'm not a Pulitzer Prize photographer, so I have to fix things. We will do that. But what I wanted to express from what I saw at that rally, everybody got along. Yeah. We had the police, we had the fire department, we had multiple resident organizations. We had the Black Lives Matter demonstrators. We had this young lady that came from the North Shore someplace, and she brought in all kinds of signs. Everybody was getting along. So what is the problem?
And Mark, there was two things that night, right? There was two things. One thing that was who was there, right, and who was allowed to speak. And so the de facto leader of this local Black Lives Matter crew. I mean, they're
Right.
not people. They're not the violent Black Lives Matter crew you see on TV.
Right.
Um,
But she's,
right? He allowed her to speak. He gave her the microphone and said, "You get time too." We all got along. We all understood it is not a false choice between A or B. Now, who wasn't there though, Mark? Who wasn't there that night?
the selectmen,
Four of them
and
were not there.
4 of them were not there, and the town manager wouldn't even show his head.
But no, Mark, forget about the town manager. This is beyond the town manager now.
Yeah, I know.
None of the 4 were there. None. To see the dialogue, I mean, the Salem News tried to portray, tried to show pictures of conflict. They tried to create something, wasn't there. It was a good night. It was about, I expected 100 people in support of the Blue Line flag.
Oh, it was over 500.
I was going to say, am I over exaggerating when I say 500?
No.
And am I exaggerating when I say the Black Lives Matter folks had 20? I mean,
Well, even doesn't matter.
no, but my
they
point is,
had-
it shows if Mr. Trask wanted to come down and start counting heads,
Yeah.
right, which he tends to do, right, and he talked about email counts and speaker counts, has to understand the silent majority, and that silent majority spoke last Thursday.
and they're still speaking. That's the
Oh, yeah.
issue. And what I wanted to do is,
Here they are, here, Mark.
what is that? Your tax return?
That's the,
No,
that's
that's
the signature we have so far.
signatures for the petition, right?
More than a few.
What we're going to do now is, I don't want to take the time. I don't have the time
Yeah, we're
to
out.
do the clip. So we have 4 minutes left. And what I would just wrap it up from your standpoint. And then what we're going to do is the next topics of the town news is going to be September 24th. And what we'll do, maybe reconvene this and expand it to additional people to discuss it, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So Keith, take it away.
Well, again, and thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to talk about this. It's been a crazy summer, right? And they sort of poked the bear on this one. And I prefer to stay home and not get involved in town politics, right? And this is a wake up call to a lot of people in town, right? And to pick up this many signatures and this quickly, you turned in a sheet the other day. It's pretty much every house on your road was in favor of a town meeting. I asked people, if you want to get involved, find me on Facebook. You can Google me. You'll find me. Find an email address for me. We're getting organized. We're not letting this go. Reach out on Facebook. Call my numbers. Easily readily available. But get a hold of me, and we will put you to work any way that you want to help out. Right, talking to your neighbors, talking to your town meeting members, whoever it is. Right, we'll get this done. We'll get this problem fixed. So,
Well, that's the process, and we're going to make it happen. And what I just want to wrap up on is that, Danvers is a unique community. It is not run-of-the-mill city or a large town that we have experienced in the past. Look at Andover. Look at some of the bigger cities. Look at Salem. What's going on over there?
Crazy.
We try to confine our issues to the town residents, and we solve them. The town management may not always solve them, but the residents do ultimately.
Right.
And that's where the town meeting members come into play. And we have another minute to go. And what I want to do is I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your thoughts in regard to what's going on in town. And I am going to address this petition issue on the next show on September 24th. And we'll get a speech that was made by Scott Frost at the Thursday meeting or rally that we had. And it was tremendous to see so many people available, make their time available to support the police